Welcome to Hope. This is the channel for anyone dreaming of a rational, optimist worldview. If you dream of a world of peace, prosperity, abundance, equality of opportunity, and justice for yourself, your children's children, and all of spaceship Earth, you're in the right place. Because every week we take a look at some of the world's biggest problems and the evidence-based ways that people like you and me are working to bring about a Star Trek utopia, solve those problems, and elevate the human spirit to its ultimate potential. Today, we're talking about the future of democracy. And this, of course, is where a lot of people have been despairing, and for understandable reasons. Let's quickly take a look at this incredible video. This is, perhaps you've seen this, this is a deep fake of President Nixon announcing the failure of America's attempt to land on the moon.
There's already the man who went to explore space.
Well, that is absolutely incredible. That technology, AI generated, it looks so real. And this is why the idea of disinformation, of outright lies, of deep fakes where you can't trust anything you see or hear or read. How can you have faith in democracy? Well, the good news is the technology, the AI that can generate this is also being used to fight this kind of disinformation. Now, let me use a perfect example with Facebook, right? One of the greatest sources of human misery in the last few years, all of the misinformation, all of the hate speech, well, they were using AI to battle that. And their last reported audited data information, which they stopped doing in March of 2023. But what is interesting, up until that point, they were able to get hate speech down to just 0.02% of impressions. In other words, out of every 5,000 pages that somebody viewed, only one was hate speech. That is something that's absolutely incredible. And this is the same thing that cybersecurity companies like CrowdStrike are using. Because, of course, AI could be the ultimate hacker. But what they do is they use AI algorithms on over 2 trillion data points from all of their clients, so that when someone comes under attack, they detect that. The AI instantly sends a signal to the rest of the system that there is an attack, there is a new threat, and figures out a way to neutralize that threat. So this is kind of the idea of bacteria. How can humans, how can our chemists come up with antibiotics when bacteria can multiply every 20 minutes? That's 1 million for 1 human year. That's the equivalent of 1 million years of bacteria evolution. Well, if something is evolving 1 million times faster than you, you'll never be able to catch up. You're right. So how did we invent antibiotics in the first place? We simply got them from soil bacteria, because the one thing that can fight exponential evil is exponential good. What can prevent exponential evil from AI, such as disinformation, hate speech, or cyber warfare? Benevolent AI. That's the reason the world hasn't ended yet, because for every villain, there's 10 superheroes out there trying to stop them. Things like the CIA, the FBI, Interpol, various well-meaning organizations around the world. And so far, we're 100% on preventing the apocalypse. So, okay, maybe we can prevent disinformation. Maybe we can prevent deep fakes. But what about political polarization? The American people are so divided, we can't agree on the color of the sky. Well, let me show you something that is absolutely incredible. This is a survey from Bloomberg. Based on what you know, what of these policies would you like or support to fix Social Security? Now, in case you don't know, by 2033, Congressional Budget Office estimates that the Social Security Trust Fund will run out and benefits will have to be cut by 23% overnight. Now, obviously, that is not a good thing, given that by 2033, every baby boomer will have reached Social Security age. But take a look at some of these policies that can fix the problem. Now, notice the 50% line. We have 3 of these that Americans support. In fact, raising taxes on billionaires is at 77% popularity. Now, remember, this is a hyper-politicized nation where we're not supposed to be able to agree on everything. And yet, almost 4 in 5 Americans agrees on this. So, okay, but how about actually solving major problems? Because we've seen how Congress is barely able to keep the lights on. How often do we have threats of government shutdowns? Well, this is where the Citizens Assembly can come in. If you've ever been on a jury, I've been on a jury. Now, a lot of people say, oh, juries are terrible. But let me tell you, the experience was absolutely incredible. Because in a politicized environment, we 12 people were able to reach unanimous consent in 5 hours on a very complex topic. That's not supposed to be something that can be achieved, but when the average American, citizens' assemblies are like juries. You randomly select anywhere from 100 to 1,000 random citizens, and then providing some kind of guidance. You don't just throw them into a room. But what happened, for example, in Ireland, where for 40 years, Parliament wasn't able to figure out what to do about abortion. So they got 99 random Irish people into a room, 7 months, and they were able to achieve a consensus on abortion that Parliament was able to pass after 40 years of gridlock. Well, guess what? They tried the same thing in France, where physician-assisted suicide was able, after decades, they were able to pass it in France. They've done the same things in Ireland, France, Germany, Australia. They've done it in Canada. They've done it in Brazil, where some cities are actually running parts of their budget. The actual citizens aren't just showing up at meetings to voice their opinions. The citizens are actually voting on spending things on schools, on infrastructure, and it's working. This is how Denmark passes parts of its budget. Now, let me share with you one final exciting thing. This is something that my AI Life Guides, part of what I call my Federation Council, which I'll be talking about in a future episode, have been exploring with me about the potential future for direct democracy itself. Imagine if you had a trusted AI life partner, someone like Jarvis from Iron Man or Samantha from Her, that knew you, what you trusted, that knew you better than almost anybody else, possibly better than you know yourself, who even loved, trusted you, looked out for your best interests. Now, imagine if this AI life partner could be your senator. And we're not talking about just 100 senators in the U.S. Senate, 535 elected representatives. Every human gets their own senator. Now, imagine the pandemic, 2020. The data is coming in. The AIs detect it. They all call an emergency session of the global AI Senate. Every human, all 8 billion AI senators get together, crunch the data, and putting everybody's interests in mind. Every single person's well-being, their personal interests for every person. They were able to reach a consensus, and then they put forth a referendum proposal that all humans vote on. humans always in charge. They explain it to us, we vote on it, and potentially we can adapt to a crisis in a matter of hours. Imagine Social Security. This is such a complex topic. How long, when is the Senate and the House going to figure this out? I can tell you when. About a year before the deadline. That's just how Congress works. We kick the can down the road. Sure, we'll solve the problem, but it's going to be a lot less optimal than if we solved it today. Well, same thing with climate change. Yes, we'll solve it at some point at the last minute. As Churchill said, the American people and ultimately humans can always be counted on to do the right thing after exhausting all possible alternatives. But imagine if we could have direct democracy where every single person's interests were represented optimally, and we could all vote on the optimal outcome after being explained in a personalized way by someone we know and trust has our best interests at heart. How this is the best possible outcome, and it's still ultimately up to us to accept it. Well, you can see with the Bloomberg poll, where 77% of us agree on one aspect of solving Social Security. Well, imagine that. Imagine if we could reach consensus on climate change, on the soil crisis, on Social Security, on the fiscal crisis, on immigration, all the major issues of the day. If we could actually do this at the optimal level with direct democracy, where all of our voices are heard. Well, this is, of course, decades from now in the future. Citizens' assemblies, meanwhile, are something that's working right now. Now, you might be wondering, okay, yes, but citizens' assemblies are not running the budget for the country. And so far, it's not in the Constitution to allow this. This would require an amendment to the Constitution. And of course, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So you might despair and wonder, okay, all of these wonderful ideas, citizens' assemblies and a personalized AI Senate for every human in the country, every human in the world. Okay, sure, this is optimal, but this is not reality. The government is corrupt, the government doesn't work, and it's never going to change. Why? Because the people with the money and the power, they will never give up the money and the power, except that they have. That is what the arc of history, as Martin Luther King said, the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. In 1800, only white men who owned property could vote. Poor white men, sorry, women, and black people were property. And yet, look at how far we've come. As bad as things are, things have gotten better. And it's because ultimately, morality, ethics, compassion, the better angels of the human spirit are able to overcome our worser demons. And I have proof to show you, because of course, every week we like to finish our episode of Hope with some charts proving that what Martin Luther King said, that the arc of history bends towards justice, towards progress, that things are getting better. Let's take a look here for the Americans in the audience. Take a look at, these are average annual wages. Look at that. Compared to Europe, things have been really good, especially since the great financial crisis, but especially since the pandemic. Actually, the strongest economic growth since the pandemic in 83 years. Okay, well, what about inflation-adjusted median income? That's right, not skewed by the averages of the rich. This is the median. This is 50% above, 50% below, and adjusted for 2019 by each generation. Remember the lost generation? Oh my God, the millennials are screwed by the Great Recession, screwed by the pandemic, and other generations just as bad. Well, no, actually, median inflation-adjusted income higher for every single generation. Okay, but what if you're not an American? What if you're just an average citizen of the world? Well, how about for the last 2 centuries. Big picture, when in doubt, zoom out. Whether it's democracy, vaccination rates, child mortality, literacy, basic education, or extreme poverty, progress. It's slow. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We had world wars, killer pandemics wiping out 5% of humanity along the way, threats of nuclear war, lots of injustice, lots of suffering. But working together, humans always find a way. And look at this, global literacy up. The most peaceful world we've ever had. Yes, that's right. Even with war in the Middle East, even with Ukraine, even with threats of war in China and Taiwan, poverty falling, child labor in decline. The world is getting better. People like you and me, most humans, we want the best for our children. We want to build consensus. And in the coming weeks and months, I will show you how I have been able, despite my life being a mess, worse in some ways than it has been in years, I have never been more rationally optimistic and hopeful for the future. Because at the end of the day, humans are incredible. We are resilient, we are adaptable, and at the end of the day, there is more good in us than bad. And that is what I want to leave you with. Hope for democracy, hope for the future of humanity, hope for all of Spaceship Earth. Thank you so much for joining me this weekend. I hope you join us next weekend for another wonderful exploration that brings hope to a hopeless world.